Good evening, and welcome to the Opus College of Business at the University of St. Thomas. I'm Dr. Mike Porter. I'm the director of the Master of Business Communication program here at the university, and I've been told that I'm your host for this evening. So, welcome. Just a couple of little housekeeping things. If you would be kind enough to turn off the sounds on your mobile devices, we are hoping that some people will engage in tweeting of this event. And the hashtag that you will be using is the UST intersections, if you're interested in tweeting questions for our panelists this evening. In addition to being able to tweet a question and it getting fed back down to me, you may have been given a piece of paper, little white square. Anybody got one? Hold one up so I've seen one. Okay, there we go. If you write your question down on that document, we will have you send it down to the end when we start the Q&A, and some of our volunteers will pick those up and feed those down to me as well. This is the first of our Intersections events for 2013, and this is Intersections in Brand Management. The series is designed to bring thought leaders in higher education and proficient practitioners in business community together to discuss a topic that impacts both. We are fortunate tonight to have two such individuals. Immediately on my left is Dr. John Sailors. He's an associate professor of marketing at the Opus College of Business. He specializes in the areas of consumer behavior, brand equity, brand loyalty, and marketing research. He manages our Applied Business Research course, part of the core curriculum for the full-time MBA program, and a course that gives MBA students real-world experience in marketing research. Before joining the University of St. Thomas, Dr. Sailors spent 8 years in the research industry with clients such as Ford, Harley-Davidson, Procter & Gamble, and so on. To his left is Steve LaCroix, who is the Vice President of Sales and Marketing and the Chief Marketing Officer for the Minnesota Vikings. In his 12th season with the team, he oversees all aspects of the Vikings generating revenue, including corporate sales, sponsorships, media sales, ticket sales, suite sales, and hospitality. And we welcome you both. And with that, I would like to point the first question to Steve, and it is, the Vikings had a great season, a dramatic turnaround from 2011. How does your work as a marketer change when the team performs well versus when it doesn't perform quite as well? And that must be quite a challenge when you are beholden to the outcomes on the field.
Right. I always joke that when we win, we're really smart in this business, and when you lose, you're stupid. You can't do anything right, I guess. But winning definitely helps. It's something that we can't necessarily rely on the business side of our organization, but when you do win, you have to be ready to capitalize and monetize and take advantage of that, and that's, those franchises and those teams around our league that have won year after year, it really can make some big strides in their revenue generation, and losing is no fun, especially in the National Football League. When you lose, you only play 16 games, 8 of those at home, and like versus baseball, you play 162 games in a season. One of our losses is like a 10-game losing streak in baseball. And so it really impacts the organization when you lose. It kind of takes a couple of days to get through, and then you kind of move on to the next weekend. But winning is darn fun, and we had a real fun year.
Now, you're speaking about the sort of the emotional feeling around the office, if you will, after a loss. How does it impact your marketing activities? Because those are going to be on a longer time horizon, usually, right?
Yeah, they are. I mean, there's the immediate response from our fans. After a loss, obviously the fan experience was not as good in the stadium. We're challenged there, regardless, being one of the older venues in the league, and we'll get into that a little bit later, I'm sure. But it's one of those again that you have to really set your marketing plan without knowing if you're going to win or lose in a season. You're not quite sure always what players are going to thrive or star, and we've been burned on that in years past, where you put a little bit too much of your marketing chips, so to speak, into a certain player or players, and then they get injured or have trouble off the field, hypothetically, if that would happen. But that's one of those, that another chapter in the book someday, some of the things we've gone through, and I think we've got a great ownership group and a head coach in Leslie Frazier that we feel very good about the mix of front office and football players.
So one of the things that fascinates me in general about marketing is the building of brand equity. And in looking at a service organization, which sports organizations are, I think, you can build equity apart from necessarily the on-field performance. And so one example in your league, I would argue, is maybe the Cowboys, at least in recent years, where since 2000, they've had 6 winning seasons, been in the playoffs 4 times, and yet are consistently cited and seen as being one of the most valuable brands in the NFL.
Sure.
So part of how academics look at brand equity starts with levels of awareness. So do you spend a lot of time and energy thinking about how aware fans are across the country, not just necessarily in the Twin Cities, Minnesota area, where you expect it to be pretty high?
Yeah, we don't necessarily, and shout out to Mark Morgan, who's on our sales and marketing staff at the Vikings. I talked Mark into coming to the Vikings, 12 years ago, so still hanging in there, and we got a new stadium coming, so God bless you for that. But no, brand equity, we don't necessarily track the, where do we rank, month by month or year by year. We kind of, take a look and see where different organizations rank us, or what's our web traffic, or our Twitter followers, or, Facebook fans versus other teams. The Cowboys have kind of positioned as, America's team, and have done a good job with that. They built the largest venue in our league at close to 3 million square feet, the first center-hung scoreboard in the National Football League, and really just took it to a different level from a building standpoint. We're more focused on how can we keep our fans engaged. What's the right level or apparatus to keep them engaged? If it's my 14-year-old son, I know it's more social media and those type of mechanisms versus my dad, who finally got an iPhone and the world has changed for him. But it's just different cultures and different generations, and so how can we find the right sweet spot with each respective fan? And frankly, we're a little bit challenged at times where we don't necessarily know who is sitting in that seat on game day. We know who the account holder is and who that initial season ticket packet went out to. What we don't know, and we're trying to get our arms around as an industry, how do you track that ticket along the way as it passes through, 2, 3, 4 times on the secondary market, and then who is physically in the seat on game day. And we're going to get better with that, I think, as we get into a new stadium, as we have better technology, as we have ways to engage fans through their mobile device, and then you can kind of then get them hooked in. Whereas in the past, we just would know who paid the bill initially, but we didn't necessarily know who the end user was.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, it is.
In thinking about what you're communicating via the different social media and other venues that you have, what kinds of unique associations does the Vikings organization want to have associated with the team and the organization?
Yeah, when it comes to social media, we feel that we've got a leg up on the content that we can create, and we're working really hard on that we've created a Vikings Entertainment Network, in the VEN as we call it. We can create content, get access in the locker room, get footage of post-game speeches, get guys after they lift weights to come into our studio, which is right in Winter Park on the basement level. How can we create insights and content for our fans that they're not going to get through ESPN.com or StarTribune.com, and I think that's an advantage. The challenge there is we can't necessarily cross that line into rumors and innuendos of what if we traded this guy, what if we, so-and-so's not playing well. We have to be a little bit cautious as the voice for the Vikings through our official website, and so that's kind of that fine line that you can kind of tiptoe up to, but you have to be careful not to step over, because then you lose your credibility or your trust within kind of the locker room, so to speak. And so that's always kind of the balance, but we feel like the power of exclusive content is something that we try to take advantage of.
Okay. I've, in some of my research and reading, I've come across these 4 factors that service organizations can use to leverage and create stronger brand equity. One's the physical facility, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which obviously has been a big thing for the Vikings the last several years. Another is the shared experience. So what the fans experience at game day, either at the venue or perhaps even at home, that creates a social cohesion and a common connection across them. Another is history and tradition, which the Vikings have a long and proud tradition. And then the final is the rituals that go along with the experience, things that are shared behaviors that create continuity with the past. So again, setting aside facility for a minute, I wonder what thoughts you have on what you do as a marketer to try to leverage each of those 3. So maybe we could start with the shared experience one.
Well, yeah, I think what you just described in those 4 traits that's professional sports. I mean, that's, it's the coming together, in a crowd in kind of a quote unquote tribal experience, to share the excitement or the woes, that you look at the Falcons this past weekend hosting an NFC Championship game and the energy in that building and the quick start, and the people in the building are thinking this is going to be a special experience. To then have the letdown of losing that game is we've had our share of both sides of that ledger over the years. And so I think, all those traits really reflect what the experience is with going to a professional sporting event. And whether it's baseball, hockey with the Wild opening this past Saturday night, I mean, that was a fun building to be in with great energy, and the fans are excited to have hockey back. And so, the part that's been holding us back, which you kind of, alluded to at the initial start of that question, was the stadium and the facility is what has really been our challenge to take that fan experience to the level that we feel it should be.
It's interesting when you talk about a loss. Those can be used to help position the brand as well, right? I mean, if you think about in a
Prefer not to.
Yeah, yeah, it's always better not to,
yeah.
right? But I think about in baseball, like the Cubs or the Red Sox, and the fact of losing kind of becomes a meaningful part of their tradition.
Right, and those those 2 organizations are. Has it been to Wrigley Field? Anybody in the? It's a good chunk. What about Fenway? So for those of you that have been there, I mean, they're 2 very unique experiences. It's definitely a kind of a walk back in time, and and so I think because they have those older facilities, and in the Cubs case, kind of chasing that World Series ring for close to over 100 years or whatever it is, a long time. And so, because they have those venues that it's more about going there and being part of the culture and the experience, the losing isn't as critical to. If either of those organizations move to a brand new stadium, you just wonder if that would change, or that dynamic would change. And so, and Fenway's gone through some renovation. The Cubs right now, with their fairly new ownership group, are looking at some significant renovation to Wrigley Field. And so how do you create renovation to be a better fan experience and generate more revenues without taking away from kind of that history and tradition and throwback mentality to their venue is going to be the balance that they have to try to figure out.
What should fans expect, to the extent that you can share, in a different experience with the new stadium that's in the works from their experience at the Dome?
Well, I mean, if we do our job right, it should be dramatically different. I mean, it's it's the basic things of, you don't have to wait 20 minutes to go to the bathroom or to buy a beer, or you can actually walk around the concourse and not have a panic attack. And so, it's things that the building is challenging, and I don't want to, I joke, and I think Mark's the same way, that neither of us toured, at the time we called it the Metrodome, now it's Mall of America Field. Neither of us toured the stadium before we took the job with the Vikings, and kind of interesting if we would have toured, if I'm sitting here or not. But no, it's just, I was excited to come here back in 2001 to be part of a team that we thought at the time was going to build a new stadium in a few years, and obviously it took longer than that. But no, it's going to be about the fan experience in the new building. It's going to be technology. how can we compete with the fan on the couch? How do I get you off your nice comfy couch with an awesome 52-inch flat screen TV, cold beer right here, bathroom 5 steps away. And so that's going to be the challenge as far as, really what can we do to replicate that home viewing experience with fantasy football, with, all the technology of, on your mobile handset. And so, that's where we got to get it right. And that's also a little bit intimidating too, where we want to make sure that the technology decisions we make today as we plan the base architecture of the building are going to be relevant in 4 years, in 2016, or not quite 4 years. And so that's a little intimidating, because who knows what the world's going to be in close to 4 years from now from a technology, whether it's hardware or software. And so we're going to work very hard and also try to make those decisions as late as we can in this building process, because you don't want to make a decision 6 months before you should and then miss kind of whatever that next technology advance is. And so that's, it's exciting in a way, but it's also a little intimidating, where you want to get that right, because there's been some stadiums in recent years where they didn't quite get it right on opening or during construction. They had to then hit, pretty expensive mulligan, shortly thereafter once they opened. And we just want to be the best in-stadium experience, from the video boards to the, going from, it's going to be an urban location, obviously, so, tailgating locations are going to be challenging, so it's going to be putting more and more pressure on the square footage of the facility itself, versus being out in the suburbs, where it's more about kind of the openness and the parking lot and that. This is going to be people probably getting in the building earlier, so having spaces for fan interaction and gathering there.
Steve, can I jump in with a quick question?
Sure.
You mentioned the change from Metrodome, Mall of America Field, and it made me think about the number of sort of shared brand instances that you have to do as a marketer in your situation. You've got the sharing with the NFL and the other teams. Can you talk a little bit about how you balance all of those, the city of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota, and how do you balance all of those brand needs in those interactions and those partnerships?
Yeah, I mean, there's a kind of current day, which is challenging in its way because of the older facility and the lack of kind of modern revenue generating opportunities. Then the flip of that is kind of the new stadium and our development with the state and the city and the Vikings, and having a public-private partnership to its core. And so it's kind of different challenges, and it's the opportunity to, how can you tie in brands, like Aquafina, our official water sponsor, always label out, a little tip for anybody. Got to pay Mark's commission. But no, it's really, how can you integrate those brands into the Vikings brand, which, we feel very proud on the amount of fan following we have, and the fact that, 3 of every 4 Twin Cities residents are considered Vikings fans, of either watching, attending, or listening to our games during the season. Of all TVs that are turned on Sundays, 2/3 of those are watching us. And so, those are powerful stats where, we never have to worry about people showing up to the party we throw. It's more so, how do you throw the right party, quote, in quotes, to make it fun for the fan, engaged in their respective areas, get the brand tie-ins, whether it's, Pepsi, Aquafina, and Frito-Lay, tying in with Cub Foods and a tailgate promotion at retail, over to Mall of America, who, names our stadium and our field, and interacting with them is really the largest tourist destination in the upper Midwest. And so that's the fun part of the job, of trying to create ways to partner the Vikings brand with those other big brands that are, in a lot of cases, Twin Cities or Minnesota based.
How do you evaluate those opportunities, say with an Aquafina, for example? What's the analytical process that you go through to decide whether it's a good fit that's worth pursuing for the Vikings or not?
Well, it's a good fit if they pay us. So, no. There's the analytics of, what are we, it's the sitting down with them, what are they looking for in a partnership, what are their marketing initiatives, what are kind of their hot buttons, and then syncing that up with what do we have to offer back, what of our are various creative ways that we can tie in so that it's a fit. I mean, you're not just, rarely do we go out and just like, let's just throw some stuff at a potential sponsor and see if they like it. It's you have to kind of learn each other's mojo as far as from a marketing and branding platform, and then you create that package. You try to find out what kind of budget spend they have, which they don't always want to tell you, but and then it's the art of creating the package and the proposal and the partnership, and then once you're in to that partnership and fulfilling and executing those contracts, then it's the evaluation analytics of did they get the return on investment, which at times is hard to track, and so they may have their strategy and we may have our strategy, and so every company is a little bit different. Are they trying to build brand? Are they trying to sell cases and volume? Are they trying to leverage end aisle space in a major retail environment? So there's a lot of different wants and needs along the way, and so you really try to find those hot buttons and get it going.
On your side, other than them paying, what do you look for them to do for the Vikings brand?
No, I mean it's good for us to be associated with companies like Mall of America, with General Mills, with Target, U.S. Bank, Best Buy, major international companies that are very highly thought of here, in this part of the country, so there's advantage for us with that, and so it goes back to, our brand, we don't always control what our brand, results in as far as wins and losses, what happens with our players, on the field versus off the field. And so all those things are factors into our brand and our brand perception and those that associate with our brand. And so those are just some dynamics you can control. Others you keep your fingers crossed. And again, when you win, things are always better, but you can't always rely on that because you can't continually win every single season of an organization's existence. You're going to have up and down and ebbs and flows, and that's what's neat about the world of professional sports is it's this roller coaster ride, both from an employee standpoint, from a fan standpoint, and the great thing about the National Football League is you can go from 3 wins to 10 wins and get in the playoffs and you make your run or build for the future, and the key is not going from 3 to 10 back to 3. You want to get 3 to 10 to maintain that consistency.
Yeah. Going back to the stadium issue for just a brief moment, as a marketer, are there things about the Dome that you're or the Mall of America field that you're going to miss?
Long pause. No, it's a great home field advantage. I mean, it's loud. If anybody was at that Packers game to close up our season in Week 17, I mean, it was an advantage to be at home against our division rival, have to win to get in the playoffs. I mean, it was loud, and that was an advantage. And so, that's the thing that I think we want to try to duplicate in the new stadium, but it's going to be bigger in square footage. It's going to be a bigger, seating bowl as far as the various levels. Doesn't mean you're going to be farther away from the action. It's not going to be just a, lower bowl, upper bowl. I mean, that's not how facilities are constructed in today's, modern era. And so how do you try to duplicate that fan or that home field advantage that's fun for the fans in a much better environment? And so that's kind of the mix we're trying to figure out. But it's, it's definitely loud, and the Twins would say the same thing, I think, from their 2 World Series championships, that, that it was a fun, loud place to be on some of those nights when they, win and get it done.
Are there marketing challenges that you're anticipating in the interim when you're going to be playing at the U Stadium?
Right, and so, we'll spend, most likely 2 seasons at the University of Minnesota, TCF Bank Stadium, and so that's challenging just in the fact of, it's not our home stadium. We're playing outdoors after playing indoors for, 30 plus years. We don't control the rights necessarily as far as, what they've programmed and sold into the facility, and so it's a balance. We're more, we'll be a kind of a tenant or a true guest for those, 10 games a year. And so it's going to be interesting because, early in the season in the, August, September, outdoors will be kind of fun. And then, obviously we all know what the last couple of weeks has been.
Right.
That'll be, so will our fan base during the course of that season, is it going to, ebb and flow as far as truly who's in the seats, or we haven't quite figured all that out yet. It's a smaller venue than what we have now, obviously, and so does that sync up? The numbers don't necessarily sync up with our season ticket base, and so we have to kind of figure out all that here when we find some free time.
And parking.
And parking.
So if you put it all together, awareness, unique associations, those 4 elements of brand equity in a service organization, do we end up with the kind of rabid fans that you see maybe in soccer in the UK or with the Cubs and Red Sox in baseball?
Yeah, I think every team has that kind of rabid fan base. This question is how deep does it go as far as your percentage of fans, and so we've got a lot of fans that are buttoned up during the week, and high-priced attorneys, whatever the example is, that have a former bread truck that's painted Vikings purple that they tailgate out of, on Sundays, and so, and then you have some that are more the stay-at-home, view from home fan. There's the, certainly the kind of every team has kind of the bandwagon when you win, jump on board kind of thing. But no, I think, UK soccer fans are, it's legendary. I mean, the home team goes in one section and the visiting team fans go in the other section, and they don't. I mean, there's like a fence in between in a lot of cases. They don't intermingle. And so while we wish we maybe had that on a few stadiums we go to during the course of the year, it's a lot different here in the U.S. But no, I think because every NFL game is so important and means so much to your bottom line of the season, I think that the fans are into every game. So it's not like, hey, we lost, let's just kind of move on because we play the next night or two. It's we got to wait 7 days to play again, and that's also feeds into, I think, the media and the NFL Network, and it's just this content build-up every Sunday, to then debrief how the game went, and then you kind of build up to the next Sunday. So it's kind of this flow during the season.
With the new stadium come a lot of opportunities to, I'll say play with, but adjust, set new prices.
Yep.
How are you going about determining what optimal price levels would be?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time in the market currently researching. We've done focus groups, we've done email surveys. I think we saw some press coverage of that several weeks ago. We're doing some additional telephone surveys. We're really trying to, we have every piece of data, what every other NFL venue has done in recent years, and how are they priced, and then it doesn't necessarily mean how they do it in Dallas or San Francisco. It means how we should do it here. It's more just trying to learn best practices, what was the strategy of how they scaled their building from a pricing standpoint, what premium amenities did they add in. Dallas went with these bunker suites all the way around the field. Seattle back in the day created the first end zone field level suites. So you kind of pick up bits and pieces like, well, that's a really cool idea. That's really cool, but maybe we don't need as many of those, and so you try to find that right product mix, all the while it's not just about the premium, corporate fan. You want to have that right amenity for the kind of the general season ticket owner or somebody that's not looking for, to spend a lot, and so it's definitely a balance. But the great thing about going last is one of the NFL stadiums, you can pick up hopefully all the cool stuff that everybody else did. Learn best practices of what maybe didn't work as well, and back that up with a lot of market research, and hopefully get it right.
Yeah.
If you don't get it right, I guess you adjust and adapt, and an economy can come into play. I mean, if you launch your new stadium sales effort during a recession period, obviously it can impact how things go versus the heyday of when things are flying high.
Any thoughts on a replica Viking longship as part of the stadium?
Tampa's got a cool ship in their end zone that every time they score, they shoot the cannons off. So we can't steal that idea, but
Right.
We've got some cool Viking ideas that I think people will be excited about.
When you compare what has been done in other markets, how do you adjust for the different demographic makeups of the different markets? When you consider what maybe they did in Detroit with Ford Field, and how we're similar or different from Detroit or any other of the markets.
It's all part of that research process, and obviously, the Upper Midwest and the Twin Cities specifically, it's a very well-educated market. It's a the average income is higher than many other cities in the U.S., and just because that's the case doesn't mean that people are going to spend more on tickets or spend more of their discretionary income. And so again, it's finding that right balance of research, and at some point along the line you have to take a little bit of a flyer on certain decisions, but you want to be at least confident on what has worked at Target Field, just a beautiful baseball venue, where did they maybe didn't maximize opportunities or didn't I wouldn't say miss on anything because it's such a great facility, but it's just one of those where I think the bar was raised in this marketplace as Xcel Energy Center came on board. Target Field, now Target Center is going to be, have some renovation, and obviously we're coming along as well. So this is going to be, I think, and with all the great facilities at University of Minnesota and University of St. Thomas and so on, you're going to have really, I think, the best venue, sports market in the country, hopefully here in 2016.
Yeah. What's the impact of, NFL is built with a lot of shared revenues across the teams, and how does that affect your work as a marketing director?
Well, I think that's what the strength of our league is based on, is that we share, our national revenues 32 ways. There's 32 NFL teams, so, that national TV revenue that comes in, that is very substantial, that's split evenly. So it's not like, the New York teams are getting more than, the non-major market teams, and so that's equal across the board. Green Bay gets the exact same amount of money from those national revenues as the New York Jets or New York Giants or whatever the example is, and so that's unique. The flip of that is it puts a lot more pressure on what revenues you generate locally, because that's really where the delta is created, because we all start with the same playing field, same salary cap, and so you can't have kind of the spenders and the non-spenders, or you can't necessarily in our league to the extreme, boy, we're going to cut payroll way back, in this certain year and get rid of all of our high-priced guys. That doesn't exist in our league, which I think is what really keeps us at the top of the sports pyramid from a stability standpoint. And then when you add in labor piece with the players, labor piece with the game officials, then all those things start to really sync up.
Steve, can I follow up with a question from the audience on that? Because I've got a question here. What challenges do league contract sponsorships create for you in creating team sponsorships, either locally or regionally?
Yeah, no, there's definitely some categories that are sold on the league level. Gatorade's a good example where they spend a significant amount of money with the league, and then that money is, again, like my example before, split back 32 ways. And so, the league has got, they have their key partners that we then have some pass-through revenues and fulfillment opportunities, but it's a lot different than it was probably 12 years ago. I think Mark would agree, where you were maybe like trying to sell against the league or kind of fighting for bits and pieces. It's really a very strategic approach where if you're going to be a league partner and utilize all 32 individual club marks, it's a substantial investment, and then we then have our local rights that we can sell. And then if certain categories are taken out of play, Gatorade again is an example, we can't go do a deal with Powerade or competing brands, and so that's where the balance comes from the league having to do a deal big enough to build for us to feel confident that we couldn't trump that amount of revenue locally.
I've got another follow-up here that is along with that. Do you have opinions about how you make decisions, whether that should be a local brand connection or a regional brand connection? The note here is talking about Lucas Oil Stadium.
Right, so the league rules are set where our marketing territory is considered the state of Minnesota, and so we're not allowed to really go out and do a Vikings Aquafina retail promotion outside of our state lines. There's a few exceptions, and when you get into like TV markets and media packages and things, but and that's where we're pretty clean because we're the only team in the state. Obviously, we feel like our fan base extends down to Des Moines, to the south, the Dakotas to the west, Canada to the north, and then we're pretty much a foot into Wisconsin, fighting uphill. We try to, say we have a lot of Vikings fans over there, but the farther in you go, the tougher that gets. But and so I think that's what's unique about our case versus you get out east to the, Baltimore Ravens, Washington Redskins. Those are very kind of convoluted marketing territories. There's ways that the league deals with that. But yeah, we, Lucas Oil's a case where, Indianapolis has a major presence there. Obviously very involved with auto racing, and Indy being the capital of auto racing. And I don't know all the specific particulars of how that deal came together. I know the guys very well that are with the Colts that I used to work with at the Pacers. But that was the perfect sync up of a company that had ties to the state of Indiana and the market of Indianapolis and that whole culture that was looking for a national brand play with their retail products under their Lucas brands.
What's the team's role with the relationships of your players in terms of marketing deals?
Right. So so every player they control their own image and rights, and they're allowed to do an endorsement with whoever they want to. We always prefer that it's that we work in collaboration, because I think there's more lift for the team and for the player if you can collaborate between player, team, and brand. But there's times when there's conflict, and so you just try to manage those. A player's not allowed to take our Vikings Norseman and package that, but they can obviously use their likeness in a generic, uniform sense. Obviously, some players are more recognizable than others, but you see Christian Ponder on a billboard campaign with Splash, wiper fluid and so their product offerings, and they're also a sponsor of ours, and that's a perfect case of player, team, and brand all working together.
Wow. What kind of impact has fantasy football had on your work as a
fantasy football players? Anybody? Some aren't admitting it. The average NFL fan spends close to 12 hours a week during the season on interacting with the NFL brand, and so it's just rounded up to 2 hours a day on average. You wonder, workforce, efficiency. Do a study on that one. So because you have the game on Sunday, that's 3 hours and 15 minutes. So there's another 9 to 11 hours during the week that they're doing something with our brand, and a lot of that is fantasy football, and that goes back to that fan experience. When you're in your seats in the stadium, you want to be able to keep track of your fantasy stats. You want to know how your players are doing, and that's on your mobile device, which obviously can be challenging in an older venue where you don't have the bandwidth, and also on your digital signage and your video boards. And so there's a major league initiative to fantasy football and fan experience, but I think those go hand in hand, where fantasy football just kind of continues each year to get bigger and bigger, and there's postseason fantasy, there's fantasy, the draft weekend in April with the league has become this whole different platform, and so it's kind of cool to see how the league has really developed a full year-round platform, kind of that we see the calendar wheel as far as how we can each month of the year try to engage our fan base, coming from Pro Bowl to playoffs to Pro Bowl to Super Bowl to free agency to draft to mini camps to training camp to in season. Is just kind of this almost becoming a 12-month calendar.
There really is almost not an off season, except in the very literal sense of the games taking place.
Right, yeah. Right. Yeah. For the front office, there's not, we're not shutting down and going to Hawaii for a couple weeks to get a tan. It's usually the season comes to an abrupt end, and you're already a step ahead into planning for the next year. We'll come out with our season ticket renewal package here in early February, so we're working actively on that, really to kind of get our pricing right and see what kind of adjustments we need to make, and as we kind of go into what we think will be our last year at the Metrodome and Mall of America Field.
You'd mentioned earlier the challenge of bringing the fan out of their comfortable living room with their large TV and with DVR, their own instant replays and everything. What have you found most effective in terms of bringing that fan to experience the game in person?
Yeah, I mean, winning certainly helps. We've these past 3 years have had our what we call fan vision, these mobile units that had DirecTV feed on it, so it had all your fantasy stats, had in-house replays, had other games that you could watch around the league. And so those are the kind of things that we kind of tested over the last few years that, into the new stadium, we think it'll be more of an app based on your mobile device. And so I think the more, again, the same technology you have at home, we want to be able to duplicate in stadium to the best that we can. Now the tough part is you're not necessarily, who really watches TV anymore without it, either, your mobile phone or your iPad, either close or in your lap, so it's one of those that you're not necessarily going to bring your iPad into a game. And so I think there's that fine line where you don't want to be like, computer plugins at every seat necessarily. Everything would be wireless now anyway. But there was a time in our industry, where people were trying to figure out, do we create full connectivity for people in their seat, or is it a way, our sporting events are more of a way to kind of get away from that part of your world and for 3 hours just kind of get away. But I think what we found is people don't want to get away from keeping in touch, and you want to be able to post that photo on Instagram immediately, not 4 hours later when you get home. It's all about the instant gratification and Snapchat and all these things that I'm learning a lot from my kids being teenagers as far as what's the kind of the cool thing that occupying their time during their downtime.
Right. We're coming out, hopefully, out of a pretty bad recession. In general, how has the NFL weathered these economic times? And then specifically in the Twin Cities market, what's the impact been on the Vikings?
Yeah, I wouldn't say pro sports are recession-proof whatsoever. I think we have a little bit of a shield there that I think that helps us. We're a discretionary buy. We're getting into people's discretionary income. There's, you don't necessarily need to spend with us to, put food on the table or, pay the mortgage on your house. Obviously, it's discretionary income that's spent. And so, and I think during downtimes is when maybe it's tougher to get that person to disengage from the TV viewing experience and come to the stadium and spend money to do so. And so, professional sports, admittedly, some of the prices have gotten very aggressive, and, what's the value proposition for spending, $300 on a single ticket versus not. And so you have to make sure that those amenities and that value, whether real or perceived, is, matches up to what it costs for that ticket. And so that's really trying to find the right product mix in the marketplace.
Have there been demographic changes that have been occurring locally or nationally that are impacting marketing football?
I think the NFL specifically, I think the female fan base is getting stronger and stronger, and you see some of the stats of how much female apparel that's NFL and team related, team branded. Those numbers are becoming very, very aggressive and growing every year, and so you're starting to see some of the branding and the commercials, and Alyssa Milano creating a women's line of NFL fashion gear, and Victoria's Secret having a whole NFL line of various things that hopefully you and I are not wearing, but at least I can vouch for myself.
Yeah.
But,
Good here too.
But it's neat to see these female, very strong female brands, creating NFL tie-ins, and then obviously youth. How do you get them engaged early? Finding the right way to not have them flip on to the next coolest thing, and then the kind of the Hispanic fan base continues to grow and grow and is a focus, and so really it's kind of different buckets that all the while we want to maintain that hardcore fan that maybe doesn't fit into any of those demographics, but it's kind of neat to see how really those are really starting to grow, and the league is finding the right mix for it.
Steve, we've got a number of questions here that relate to social media, and you were sort of alluding to some of that just a second ago. Can you talk a little bit about your goals in that area and how you're measuring and where you're getting targets and how are you using social media?
Well, we use it a lot, and so it's a matter of there's the old adage: do you pick a couple social media initiatives and go heavy, or do you try to kind of chase the latest and greatest of what, maybe is the latest trend. And so it's definitely a balance. Which I'm sure for some of you in the room is going to sound maybe a little bit archaic, but we, for the first time, hired a staff level manager that literally 24/7, it's about social media. It used to be more kind of spread across multiple individuals and departments, but when Kristen wakes up in the morning, it's about Viking social media and how do we, grow Instagram and Twitter, and what kind of exclusive content, how are we trending in certain areas. And so the bigger challenge from a professional team is how do you monetize it. And because it's great to have a bunch of fans on your Facebook account and following along on Twitter, but how do you drive money to the bottom line? And so admittedly, we've got a lot of work to do in that area, because you don't want to turn that follower off like, man, all they're trying to do is sell me something. I'm trying to follow them to get cool insights and kind of feel like I'm part of the inner circle. And so it's kind of a balance that all of us at teams are trying to figure out. And I think a lot of social media companies are trying to figure out too. Obviously, some are doing better than others.
When you talk about monetizing things like social media, I always go to thinking of sort of short-term results versus medium and long-term. What's sort of the time horizon that your organization looks at when you look at initiatives like in social media? How quickly are you looking to see some impact on that bottom line?
Yeah, it's we did a kind of whole campaign on social media about Adrian as MVP, 28 reasons that number 28 should be MVP of the NFL, and so it was really neat to see how that grew, our followers, how we trended into certain areas. And so that was one of those that, hey, it's a cool idea, it's for a great cause, because we believe in Adrian being the MVP in our league this season. Just had an outstanding, season coming off obviously a devastating injury the year before. And so, those kind of things, we're probably not as far out on the horizon as we could be, or other big brands in town are. But I think we're trying to catch up in that area as fast as we can.
Mike, I know you have a lot of other questions from the audience.
And this one's I've been wanting to hear the answer to this one myself for quite a while. What do you say is your competitive set? And do you focus on winning people over from other sports, or developing interest in general?
A competitive set? So that I'm a dumb sports guy. Give me a definition as far as market. So as far as what are we trying to?
I used to work at the track a million years ago, and on a given Saturday afternoon, you're competing with a Twins game, but you're also competing. You have maybe multiple competitive sets, because you're competing for eyeballs at home and in social media, and so.
No, I think obviously we compete against the other teams in town, but in a friendly and we think professional way. I mean, we're not trying to steal Twins fans. I think when teams in town win and multiple teams win, I think the tide rises and the fan energy rises. When every team is losing, it's no fun. I think we're competing in sports. It's the discretionary income. We're competing against people, not going to their cabin on a weekend instead of coming to a game on in September for us, or not going to a movie on a Friday night. Let's save up and go to a Vikings game. And then you also mentioned how obviously we're in a way competing with the TV viewing experience, where that fan may be interacting with our brand on TV on Sundays, but not spending directly with us per se, which is fine. That's what drives our league, but it's that fine balance of promoting Red Zone channel versus buying tickets. And so we just, as an organization, have to find the right balance of that. But we have a lot of competition, and like every product does, and in our case, it's a unique challenge which we like.
There are a couple of questions here about balancing the family-friendly experience with, on the one hand, this very violent game, and on the other hand, the potential that the prices of tickets are going to become more and more premium. So if you can sort of balance those.
That is a definite challenge as far as how do you create a family experience where a family of four can, one, take that time out of their busy family schedule take that money out of their discretionary to family of four. You have to park and buy tickets and concessions and hopefully souvenirs and make a day of it. And so, and in our case, in an older venue that you can't really create, family sections and things that we'll do in the new stadium. That's what'll be neat about resetting the deck in the new building, is just creating those areas that can reflect those different initiatives versus everybody kind of thrown into the same concourse or the same, kind of seating bowl. Yeah, it's definitely, we want the families to come, and it's probably a little bit more challenging now than maybe, hopefully, it will be in the future.
So and it's sort of an extension of what you just said about the new stadium. What if the new stadium is not sufficient to overcome the record of the team?
Well, what are you saying? We're not going to win?
I just read them. I don't write them.
Yeah. He's got a purple shirt on, so I'll let him go. But
That's St. Thomas.
If in a new stadium, you should not be relying on wins and losses. Obviously, the 49ers are a perfect example. If they win the Super Bowl in the years, literally they're looking to open in 2014. They're in the marketplace selling, all their seats right now, their sponsorships. It could be just really good timing for them to win a Super Bowl as they're ramping up, and that's the perfect storm. Obviously, the Ravens, aren't building a new stadium. They want to win just as badly, but I think their organization will be positioned to monetize and leverage that, and that's the pinnacle of our profession, is winning world championships. And as we all know, we've been a little short on that, and we hope to change that in the future. And be awesome from my chair and Mark's chair to win a Super Bowl, as we're selling the new stadium. So I'm all for that.
To that end, could the Vikes benefit from a customer loyalty program?
Yeah, those are things that we've kind of dabbled. Some teams are getting, I know the Cavaliers just today announced a new customer loyalty program that we're going to monitor. Yeah, I think we need to get better in that area. Do we evolve away from a paper ticket and it's all on your mobile device, and then you've got ways to, kind of give people points for concessions and merchandise sold, and some things that obviously so many companies do so well outside of the sports industry. I don't think any team has completely nailed it yet, but that's something we'll be working on hard over the next 3 or 4 years to see if the new stadium is a way to kind of launch into that world.
I get a little Vikings thing on my keychain when I go to the supermarket and get points. And
keep track how many beers you buy at the stadium. And
what segments, or have you done any work using analytics with big data?
No, I mean, it's we get a lot. We do a lot of research with the league. We do some things locally. As far as again, I think it's an area where in the world of professional sports we can get better. If we can partner with the league and other clubs and do some more global research, and then also apply that locally, I think all the better. Most of our current research is focused on new stadium and kind of getting the right things that I talked about before on product mix and opportunities.
Do you have working relationships with your peers at other teams?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been doing this 22 years or so, and so I've only worked for 2 teams, the Pacers and the Vikings. There's a lot of my peers that maybe worked for 5 or 6 teams during that time, or whatever the example is. They're, like any industry, people bounce around, and some teams we relate with better than others as far as their stadium situation, or their market size, or their competitive set. Start using that term, competitive set within their marketplace. And so it's every team has a little different twist on things. They're not all run the same way, which I think is what makes sports leagues unique, is because it's not all 32, in our case, all 32 clubs going about their business exactly the same way. Some have ticket sales challenges, some have market size challenges, some have win-loss challenges, and so everybody's kind of got their, kind of their uphill battle, but all have our strengths as well.
I've got a couple questions here about the game in London.
Yep.
And what are your marketing goals, and what challenges are you facing because of it?
Well, as you may or may not know, we have a home game, a Vikings home game next season in London. It'll be the end of September. We're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers. We felt it was the right time, based on our stadium situation and our transition into the new stadium, to take our game internationally. really try to leverage our brand internationally. We think kind of Northern Europe and the whole Viking heritage could be a unique twist in London. The league is excited to see how that kind of grows. The league in general is really trying to expand internationally, and they feel like, and we agree that London is really the front door to going national, whereas maybe the NBA is looked at more as China because of the growth of basketball in China. That's been kind of more their gateway. Football is a complicated sport. American football, it's a lot of rules. It's not necessarily played worldwide. It takes a lot of equipment, and so it's something that the league is really trying to grow on that world platform outside of Super Bowl, and we feel that London's really the right launching pad, and we're excited to be part of that and kind of on the world stage, so to speak.
Do the Vikings try to actively intersect events other than Viking games at the facilities that you're playing at?
As far as like our home games, whether it's Holodazzle or when we have a game on a Sunday and the Wolves are Wilder at home on Saturday, I mean there's some neat synergies there. It happens where you compete sometimes with times of games, and you just try to manage that. Obviously, we didn't have conflicting times when the Twins and the Vikings played in the same stadium. Now that we're across downtown from each other, there are times when our schedule conflicts with theirs, and so you really just try to manage that. A lot of that is managing, not necessarily that you're competing at time, but managing traffic flow and game workers. We have a lot of the same ushers or video board operators or whatever the example is work at our stadium as well as at Target Field, and so that kind of spreads a little bit of a conflict there too. But and then when we go on the road, obviously it's a little different proposition. Fans kind of find their way to our road games. We don't necessarily sell any tickets for our road games. They have to source those through the home team or through the secondary market.
If I'm interpreting this right, this person may have been interested as much in a concert that is happening in the facility within close proximity.
And that's where I think in the new stadium it'll be, if you've got the Rolling Stones on Saturday and the Vikings on Sunday, that could be a pretty cool weekend. Obviously, with the current Metrodome status, as far as there's really no concerts that take place there because of the sound challenges, but. That'll be the cool part of the new stadium. It's going to be a lot of really neat events that, whether it's, Kenny Chesney going outdoor and indoor, doing both or whatever the example is, will be fun to kind of get back on that national stage for NCAA events. We're trying to get a Super Bowl for, 2018, BCS championship game, some type of, hockey event, whatever we can come up with in partnership with the authority. I think it'll be fun to work on.
Okay. In the interest of time, we're going to try and wrap up here by 7 o'clock, and I've got two last questions. If your question hasn't been answered, our panelists here have generously said that they will answer those questions that weren't answered online, and those will be available in the coming days, and you'll, if you were attending, you'll get some sort of notification of that. But so I've got one larger question and then one quick question to sort of wrap things up. So what does the day-to-day life of a professional CMO consist of?
Well, today it was 8 hours of sitting in the same chair, having presentations from the three companies that are bidding to build the stadium, physically build it. So that was neat to be part of that process. A few months back, it was picking the architect in partnership with the authority. So the old proverbial every day is different, in season, out of season. In my personal case, with the new stadium, it's been a lot of my bandwidth has been and is and will be new stadium related, which is very exciting. Doesn't mean the day job responsibilities go away, and so. Mark will attest, you're not seeing me probably as much around the office because in meetings, which is fun to be part of that inner circle, designing and creating this facility. And so, it's a fun business when you win. I mean, there's nothing like it. And I've never won a world championship. I have no championship rings. I got the NBA Finals with the Pacers when we played the Lakers. Ironically, I was in LA last week and went to Staples Center for the first time since we played there in the finals back, it was, I guess, late 90s. And so that whole area has really changed, and they've created this whole entertainment district around Staples Center. It used to be Staples Center in downtown LA with a bunch of parking lots. Now it's this really cool entertainment district, and it was really kind of a neat way to reinforce what we're trying to do in downtown Minneapolis and really, tie in with so many of the great things that are already going on versus feeling like we're kind of on an island by ourselves in the current situation.
And the last question is, who's your favorite player?
Wow. My 14-year-old son, how about that?
Good answer.
Good answer. No, I'm not going to say. I have some guys that I know well, others that not as much. Others, have moved on. It's just neat to see the different personalities. Some are very much trying to learn the business, others not as much. And so, again, it's neat to see the group that Rick Spielman and Leslie Frazier have put together. That we think there's some special times ahead, and it'd be great to win a championship. It'd be really great to win a championship with a bunch of guys that you really like and feel like the locker room is really united. And so but I'm not going to give you a name.
That was an exceptionally diplomatic answer.
Yeah.
Let's thank both John and Steve for their time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for attending this Intersections event, and look for emails telling you about the next one.
All right.